Hi everyone, my name is James.
And I'm Olivia.
Today we're going to tackle something that's silently draining your time and potential. Distraction. You ever feel like no matter how hard you try, you just can't stay on track? Like your day slips away in random scrolling, endless notifications, or binge watching? Same here.
But here's the thing. What if I told you that the opposite of distraction isn't focus, it's traction? Sounds strange, right?
Well, stick around because in the next few minutes, we're going to show you how this one shift can completely change the way you look at productivity and help you stop wasting your life. Let's get started.
Have you ever sat down, with every intention of, finally getting to your to-do list?
Uh-huh.
And then an hour later, you realize you've just been scrolling on your phone.
Oh, yeah.
It's happened to all of us, right?
Totally. It happens all the time.
It's like the opposite of productivity.
Yeah, it's distraction.
Distraction.
The bane of our existence.
But what if I told you there's a way to actually break free from distraction?
Okay, I'm listening.
So for this deep dive, we're talking all about Nir book, Indistractable.
Okay.
And you know what's so interesting about this book is that he actually talks about how he struggled with distraction for years.
Really? Even while writing the book?
Yeah, even while writing a book about how to not be distracted.
That's ironic. But also, it makes his insights even more valuable, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So what is this game-changing secret to becoming indistractable?
Well, we often think the opposite of distraction is focus.
Right.
But Ale suggests it's actually traction. Traction. And when you think about it, both words share the same 6 letters at the end. Action.
Oh, that's true.
So they're two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
Distraction pulls us away from what we truly want.
Right.
And traction propels us toward it.
Okay, so instead of fighting against distraction, we should be focusing on building traction.
Exactly. That's the reframe.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
Well, Ale outlines 4 key principles in the book.
Okay.
And we're going to dive into all of them today.
Awesome.
But first, I want to talk about one of the biggest myths about distraction.
Okay, what is it?
We tend to blame external things,
Yeah.
like our phones, our emails, notifications,
Social media.
all of that, right?
For sure.
But those external triggers only account for about 10% of the problem.
Seriously? Only 10%?
10%.
I would have thought it was way higher.
It's not. So where's the other 90% coming from?
Yeah, where is it coming from?
Well, it turns out the vast majority of our distractions actually stem from internal triggers.
Internal triggers.
Those are internal triggers.
So what does that mean?
So these are things like boredom, anxiety, loneliness, fatigue.
Oh.
All those uncomfortable feelings that we experience throughout the day.
Yeah.
And when we feel those feelings, we instinctively reach for distractions as a way to escape.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I know when I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed,
Yeah.
I suddenly want to do anything but the task at hand.
Right, exactly. It's like our brain's way of hitting the snooze button on those uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah. So if we're not supposed to give in to those urges, how do we deal with them?
Well, that's a great question. And AL suggests a technique called the 10-minute rule.
The 10-minute rule.
Okay.
So this doesn't mean you have to suffer in silence for 10 minutes straight.
Okay.
It's more about creating a little space between the urge to get distracted and actually giving in.
So it's like delaying gratification.
Exactly. Like
Oh.
delaying gratification, but for distractions.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. So give myself 10 minutes and maybe that urge will go away.
Exactly. And often that's exactly what happens.
Wow.
But during those 10 minutes, you have 2 options.
No.
You can either return to the task at hand
No.
or surf the urge.
Surf the urge. What does that mean?
So instead of trying to fight the urge head on, you try observing it with curiosity.
Oh, okay.
You ask yourself, what emotion am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? What am I trying to avoid? And often simply acknowledging the emotion and its root cause can be enough to diffuse its power.
So we're becoming detectives of our own distractions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to help you with this detective work, Ale recommends keeping a distraction notebook.
A distraction notebook.
Yeah.
I like that. So what do I write in it?
So every time you feel that urge to get distracted, you just jot down a few things, what you were doing, what you're feeling, and what the distraction was.
Okay.
And over time, you'll start to notice patterns.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So for example, I've noticed that whenever I'm facing a really tight deadline,
Yeah.
I suddenly have the urge to clean my entire house.
Oh, yeah. Classic procrastination.
Yeah, I need tips for that.
Absolutely. And it actually ties in perfectly with Il's second principle, debunking the willpower myth.
The willpower myth.
The willpower myth. And this one might surprise you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so the willpower myth, we've all heard it, right? Like, willpower is like a muscle. It gets tired with overuse.
Yeah, I've definitely used that excuse before.
Right, we all have. But here's the thing. Research actually suggests that's not entirely true.
Wait, what? So you're telling me all those times I blamed my late night snacking on depleted willpower?
Uh-huh.
It was all in my head.
Pretty much. It turns out willpower isn't this finite resource that gets drained throughout the day.
Okay.
It's more about our beliefs about willpower.
Interesting.
If we believe our willpower is weak, well, guess what it will be?
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
So like if I keep telling myself I have no willpower, I'm basically setting myself up to fail.
Yeah, exactly. And on the flip side, if we believe we have the capacity to stay focused, we're more likely to actually do that.
So it's all about mindset.
Mindset is a huge part of it.
Okay, so how do we shift our mindset?
Yeah.
How do we start believing in our ability to stay on track?
Well, one really powerful way is to shift from relying solely on willpower to creating systems that support traction.
Systems. So
Yeah.
what kind of systems are we talking about?
So instead of just trying to white knuckle your way through every temptation, you actually design your environment to make it easier to do the things you want to do and harder to get distracted.
Okay, so it's like setting yourself up for success.
Exactly.
Rather than relying on willpower to resist every single temptation.
You got it.
Can you give me some examples of these systems?
Sure. So let's say you're trying to cut back on social media.
Yeah.
Instead of relying on willpower to resist those notifications.
Yeah.
What if you just delete the apps from your phone during work hours?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Right? Or let's say you're constantly getting sidetracked by emails. Instead of responding to every single ping as it comes in,
Right.
you set aside specific times in your day to check and respond to emails.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's about removing those temptations and distractions from your environment.
Exactly.
I like it. So we've got these internal triggers figured out.
Yeah,
We're working on debunking that willpower myth.
right.
What's the next step in building this traction?
Well, this brings us to principle number 3, and this one is all about time.
Time.
Time. It's called time boxing.
Time boxing. Okay, I have to admit I'm a big fan of to-do lists,
Uh-huh.
but even I have to admit they can get pretty overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, to-do lists are great for capturing everything you need to do,
Right.
but they don't tell you when to do them.
That's true.
And that's where time boxing comes in.
Okay, so how does it work?
So instead of just writing down, write report on your to-do list,
Yeah.
you actually block off a specific time in your calendar dedicated solely to writing that report.
So I'm like making an appointment with my to-do list items.
Exactly. It's like giving each task its own little time slot.
I like that. So there's no more like wandering aimlessly through my day,
Right.
hoping I magically find the time for everything.
You become the architect of your time.
Okay, but isn't there a danger of becoming like a slave to the schedule? What about spontaneity?
That's a great point. And it's important to remember that time boxing is a tool,
Okay,
not a tyrant.
got it.
It's about making conscious choices about how you spend your time.
Right.
But it shouldn't feel restrictive or suffocating. If inspiration strikes outside of your scheduled time block, by all means, embrace it.
Okay, so it's about finding that balance between structure and flexibility.
Exactly.
All right, I'm starting to see the appeal of this time boxing thing,
Yeah.
but I'm still a little intimidated by the thought of like scheduling every minute of my day.
You don't have to go all in right away. Start small.
Okay.
Maybe pick one area of your life you want to build more traction in,
Okay.
like your work schedule or your morning routine, and just experiment with time boxing for a week and see how it feels.
Baby steps.
Baby steps.
I can do that. Any other tips for time boxing newbies?
Well, one key tip is to be realistic with your time estimates. It's so easy to underestimate how long things will actually take.
Oh, yeah.
So if you think a task will take an hour, schedule 90 minutes.
Okay, buffer time.
Buffer time is key. And don't forget to schedule in breaks, too.
Breaks. Yes,
Yeah.
essential. I'm definitely guilty of trying to power through without taking enough breaks.
Yeah, breaks are so important for recharging and coming back to your work with fresh eyes.
So we've tackled those sneaky internal triggers,
Uh-huh.
debunked the willpower myth, and we've even learned how to time box our way to traction.
We're on a roll.
But what about those external triggers? The dings, the pings, the endless notification.
Ah, yes, the attention-grabbing gremlins.
How do we deal with those?
Well, that's where principle number 4 comes in mastering external triggers.
Okay.
And while internal triggers are often the root cause of distraction, those external triggers can be like little landmines,
Ugh.
just waiting to derail our focus.
I swear my phone has a sixth sense for when I'm about to get into a groove.
I know, right?
It's like it knows exactly when to unleash a barrage of notifications.
It's like they have a mind of their own.
They really do. So how do we take back control?
Well, it starts with becoming aware of what those external triggers are and how they impact us.
So we need to do a distraction audit.
Exactly. Figure out what those culprits are.
Okay. And once we know what they are, then what?
Well, then you can start to implement strategies to manage them. And IEL has some great tactics for doing just that. Well, one of the most effective strategies is actually really simple.
Okay.
Just turn off those non-essential notifications.
You know what? You're right.
Like, do you really need to know every time someone likes your Instagram post?
Probably not.
It's like a Pavlovian response, right?
It is.
We hear that ding and we just have to check it.
We're trained.
Yeah, but those constant interruptions, they really add up, you know?
They do. They chip away at our focus.
And our sanity.
For sure. What about those times when you really need to just be totally unreachable?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're working on a deadline or you just need some downtime?
Right. Well, that's where designated focus times come in.
Focus times.
Yeah. So this could be for a specific block of time each day or maybe during certain work sessions.
Right.
The key is to let people know, when you're available and when you need that uninterrupted time.
Oh.
And you can even use technology to your advantage here.
Oh, how so?
Putting your phone on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah.
Or using apps that block distracting websites.
Right. It's like we can actually use technology to help us focus instead of just always distracting us.
Exactly. It's about being intentional.
I like it. So much of this conversation has been about personal productivity.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, could becoming indistractable actually have an impact on the world around us?
That's a really interesting question.
Could it make a difference?
I think it could, because distraction isn't just a personal problem, it's also a societal one.
Right.
When we're constantly bombarded with information and stimuli, it erodes our ability to think deeply,
Yeah.
to connect with others,
Uh-huh.
and to solve complex problems.
It's like we're losing our collective capacity for focus.
Exactly, and that has implications for everything.
Right. So as more people cultivate this indistractability,
Yeah.
it could actually create a ripple effect.
I think so. We become more present in our interactions,
Uh-huh.
more effective in our work.
And more engaged citizens.
Absolutely.
That's actually really inspiring.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is one key takeaway you want listeners to leave with?
I would say you have way more control over your attention than you think you do.
Okay.
It starts with awareness,
Uh-huh.
and then it's about taking small but powerful steps to shift from distraction to traction.
Yeah, I love that. And it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about progress.
Exactly. And aligning your actions with your values,
And creating a life that feels more meaningful,
more fulfilling.
more focused.
But-
This has been such a great conversation. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on distraction.
Me too.
And I'm actually hopeful that I can make some changes.
That's what it's all about.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into Indistractable.
It was my pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful.
And empowering.
Until next time, stay curious, stay focused, and keep building that traction.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content.